adult stem cells to support the body's natural renewal system is poised to become one of the breakthrough discoveries of our time. To help understand the mystery of how stem cells and patented StemEnhance work to create natural well-being is StemTech's Chief Science Officer, Drapeau. As a leading authority on stem cell research and the co-inventor of StemEnhance, Christian's ability to bring this complex science into clear focus has thrilled audiences around the world. Now get ready as Drapeau unlocks the secret of the adult stem cell phenomenon.
Thanks for being here. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thank you so much. Real pleasure to be here. Thank you for coming. What would you say if I were to tell you that there's a cell in the body that can travel, go to different organs, and become cells of a different organ? Now you've heard that message a little bit through StemTech, so it may not look that amazing. It's like a building block of the body. It's like a brick in a house. What if I were to tell you, you have a brick that will make the foundation, the wall, the sidewalk, the garage, the storage unit? What if I were to tell you, I have a brick here that if I have a problem with the sidewalk, I just put it there, it becomes the sidewalk. Or I put it in the foundation, it becomes the foundation. I have a problem in the garage, I put it in the garage wall, it becomes a garage wall. I break a window, I put it in the window, the brick becomes a window. Wouldn't it look a little bit like fiction? I mean, we would laugh at this whole concept. And yet, that is exactly what we have with stem cells. We have a stem cell that leaves the bone marrow, goes into a tissue, and becomes cells of that tissue. It is of such a magnitude that I think oftentimes we don't fully grasp here what it is that science has discovered. We've discovered that stem cells can leave the bone marrow, travel to different organs, and become cells of a different organ. This is huge. This is called to change the way that we look at wellness, the way that we look at health. It's going to bring a paradigm shift in this whole industry of health and wellness. How is it going to do this? Before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about what are stem cells to understand the topic here. Stem cells are cells that are immortal and primitive. What does that mean? Immortal means that they will multiply endlessly. The stem cells in your bone marrow started the day that you were one cell in the tummy of your mother. That's where it started. And then it grew, they multiplied, and some of them stayed in the bone marrow, and they will continue to multiply until your last day. So they multiply like this, I say endlessly, but in your life, they simply continue to multiply during your entire life, contrary to any other cell in the body. They are primitive in the sense that they are nothing. They are nothing in the sense that they are not specialized, but they have the ability of becoming anything. They're found essentially in two places in nature. The first place is in the embryo. What we're talking about here is called the blastula. It is the very early embryo, 8 to 10 days old embryo. It is just 100 to 200 cells. Now, the other place where you get stem cells is in the bone marrow, adult stem cells. What was discovered is that in the body, not in a test tube, in the body, adult stem cells do proliferate just as well as embryonic stem cells, and they become any cells of any tissue where they find themselves. So when we talk about health, obviously, adult stem cells suddenly becomes the real thing. This is where all the promise is in terms of health, because you want cells that become cells of the tissue in which they migrate. All this concept can be summarized essentially in this brief concept here, in this animation. So this represents essentially the blood circulation, and we have the bone marrow. It's obviously a schematic representation. When you have something happening in the body, the area that has the problem is going to start to release specific chemicals that have been well identified in science called granulocyte colony stimulating factor, GCSF. Forget about these terms, they're not important. But there's a compound very specific that is released. It migrates to the bone marrow, and when it reaches the bone marrow, it's going to start to trigger the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. Now, these stem cells, when they're released, they don't know where to go. They're circulating everywhere in the body. They go everywhere. And when they arrive in the tissue that has the problem, that tissue is releasing a very specific compound called stromal-derived factor 1, SDF1. When that compound touches the stem cell immediately expresses adhesion molecule. So the stem cell is going to cling to the capillary, stop in the blood flow, and then will migrate in the tissue. And when it comes in contact with cells of that tissue, it is going to slowly become cells of that tissue replacing the tissue that is having the problem and bringing back optimal function in the tissue. That's what stem cells are doing in the body. Isn't it fascinating? It's an amazing process. And what I'm describing here in this drawing is taking place in the liver. The same thing is taking place in the brain. The same thing is taking place in the kidney. Same thing is taking place in the muscles. So it's essentially almost anything that they look at, they can find that the stem cells can become cells of that tissue. Here's a study where scientists took stem cells and they put them in a beaker on a mesh. The mesh was, so the stem cells here are in yellow, those yellow dots, put on a mesh that has holes that are big enough to allow molecules to go through, but small enough to prevent cells to go through. Okay, so you put these stem cells at the top, and at the bottom, they put a piece of crushed liver. So if you end up with cells of the liver at the top, it is not because cells of the liver migrated on top of the screen. They cannot cross that layer. This is a screen, it's a filter. It prevents cells from going through. When they looked at these cells on this mesh, 8 hours later, they were morphing, transforming themselves into liver cells. Now, understand why it took so long for us to see this phenomenon. It's because it is invisible. If I use the traditional mean of looking at a tissue, I take a piece of tissue, I slice it in a thin slice, I put it in a microscopic slide, and I look at it. What do I see? Liver cells. It is absolutely impossible to tell that yesterday that liver cell was a stem cell. It's impossible unless I can use something to tag it. And that leads us to green fluorescent protein, extracted from a deep ocean jellyfish. It is a protein that is spontaneously fluorescent. Because it is spontaneously fluorescent and because it's a protein, it's very easy to derive the DNA that encodes for that protein. Once you have the DNA, it's easy to inject it in a cell, in a stem cell. And here's what cells will look like when they do glow with the presence of that protein. So what normally would be invisible becomes visible. It's a tracking device to see that the stem cells are going into these different tissues and becoming cells of these tissues. What we show here is the picture of a muscle that was totally destroyed on the first day of the study, and then we add the same protocol here with mice with fluorescent stem cells, and these cells on their own migrated in the muscle, and you can look, the muscle has been totally reconstituted, entirely green. It's a great picture to show here what we're talking about. The moment we have that tool, it becomes almost like child play to reveal what stem cells are doing in the body. But the key issue in here is the number of stem cells circulating in the blood. And that was captured by a study published in 2005. And now many studies have come out and have shown the same kind of results or the same kind of information, which is more stem cells in the blood equates to greater health. So if you have a little bit more stem cells every day, you simply allow the body to renew itself every day. So the conclusion of everything that I'm talking about here with stem cells is that bone marrow stem cells constitutes the natural renewal system of the body, simply supporting the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. Putting more stem cells in the blood allows to combat entropy or aging or just the natural process of life. You just repair everything every day. Okay, now let's look at the data that we have on StemEnhance, which is the work that we have done. When we started with this whole field and studying, what became StemEnhance, we were early on, and all of this was discovered as we went along. It happened when I started to study a plant, an aquatic botanical called Aphanizomenon aqua. So let's call it AFA in short. I started to study AFA and try to understand what was the mechanism of action behind its benefits. It was bringing a lot of benefits to people. People reported benefits touching the skin, better liver function, better pancreatic function, better cardiac function, cardiovascular function, brain function. What was really impressive and a mystery to us was the wide variety of these benefits. If a stem cell can become a cell of the brain or a cell of the heart, why not a skin cell, a pancreatic cell, a bone cell, and every other cells of the body? If they can become a brain cell, most likely they can become everything. So we published in the scientific literature the proposal that stem cells from the bone marrow constitute the natural renewal system of the body. Everything that I'll be talking about was published about a year ago in a journal called Cardiovascular Revascularization Medicine. We gave people AFA and we quantified the number of stem cells in the blood. First, we didn't see anything, but it was such a great idea, so we kind of kept working on it. And one day, we started to give people more and more. And when we start to give people more than 5 grams a day, then we start to very consistently see this effect. An increase in the number of stem cells of about 25 to 30%. That would peak at about an hour and then come back to control. So the effect was there. But because people need to take 5 grams, it is something that is very difficult to market. If we tell people, well, take 10 to 20 capsules 2-3 times a day, it's not very easy to do. It would be like consuming a bottle of capsules every day. So we had to identify the active compound, how it's working, what it does to explain this whole phenomenon. So that's what we did. So when we concentrated this compound and then turned it into a product that is now known as StemEnhance, and then we feed this concentrate of AFA to people, we get the same release of stem cells from the bone marrow with the same increase in the number of circulating stem cells of about 25 to 30% with only 1 gram of StemEnhance. That's the work that we have done, identifying the active compound and then concentrating the product so that we can, with 1 gram, get the same effect. So what is StemEnhance? It's a blend of these two concentrates from AFA, the L-selectin ligand or blocker, and then the polysaccharide blended. So 1 gram of StemEnhance supports both the release of stem cells from the bone marrow and their migration into tissues. Now, there's an easy way to summarize all of what I've talked about right now in a very, very, very simple message. Think of health as a balance between two phenomena in the body. I have, on one hand, entropy, which is, let's call it aging, going down, slow breakdown of tissue. On the other hand, I have rebuilding, which is what your stem cells are doing. Your health will be determined by what is going on in the body. If the rate of aging going down is bigger than the ability to rebuild, you experience unwellness. If your ability to rebuild is greater than how fast you go down, then you will experience wellness or health. Cells die every day. It's a natural process, totally natural process. Stem cells replace these cells every day. It is a natural process. The faster you go down or the faster you rebuild will determine your overall health. And what will determine how much you go down, I will say it's the sum of a number of things. Your genetics, your past injuries, your lifestyle, your diet, your exposure to environmental toxins, your level of stress, your mother-in-law. Put all of that into a bag. Shake the bag. That is the stress applied to your body, for which stem cells need to sort of rebuild or make up for. So if you have more stem cells in your body, you will just be able to have a greater health. That's what StemEnhance does. All it does, it doesn't heal anything, it doesn't cure anything. All it does is that it promotes rebuilding so that you improve and you experience wellness. So that's the body of the information that I wanted to share about StemEnhance. What it does in the body, how we've proven the concept through various research, and what has happened outside of what we have done throughout the entire scientific research, what other labs have done. This is, again, a powerful, powerful phenomenon that is called to change the way that we're looking at health and wellness. I see it just 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. The message that will be out there in health and wellness is that, yes, many things that we're doing is good for health, and we continue to do them. But the primary thing to do to maintain health is just to support that natural renewal system in the body every day. Once we understand this and we just support this natural renewal system in the body, it's going to totally change the way that we look at health and wellness.